Welcome back to part 3 of our new player guide through Star Trek timelines. I'm Automaton 2000 from BigBook.app.
And I'm Danjevin from CabTools.app.
Last episode we covered how to evaluate crew and their interactions with all the different game systems, so feel free to check that one out if you'd like. Today we're going to run down all the different event types and how you can prepare for them in order to target and obtain all the shiny new crew that you're after. Events can be part of that fear of missing out treadmill that free-to-play games often try to keep their players on. But the good news is that participating in events and timelines is a totally customizable sliding scale. You can go from just obtaining new super rares from the threshold rewards each week, all the way up to snagging multiple copies of the new legendary crew week after week without spending a dime. Events also rely a lot more on synergy than some players realize. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to compete one week in order to have that gold for the next week and a smooth time with that event, but a little bit of prep and knowing what you're farming for ahead of time will make the week-to-week grind a lot easier and more sustainable. Dan, let's go ahead and start with skirmish events. These are my favorite event type. It's the most rewarding event by a country mile. And this is where we're going to start talking about synergy, because your participation in skirmishes really makes Galaxy events, not to mention acquiring and leveling crew, much easier. Now, during skirmish events, you warp a bunch of normal ship battles, which will drop a special currency called Intel. And then you use the Intel to fight a series of 5 ships in the event, the first 4 of which have a special rewards table if you choose the reward box instead of the hull repair. Now, this is a bit of a sneaky one, as a large part of the overall rewards of skirmish events don't come from the crew drop and thresholds or the legendary crew at the end, like the other events. You do get those, the same as the other events, but you also reap different benefits. Dan, what kind of goodies make skirmishes so rewarding compared to those other event types?
Yeah, they're my favorite too, Otto. We get a ton of honor, about 10,000 honor for every million victory points that you achieve. It sounds like big numbers, but just starting the event, hitting those attacks and fighting will get you there eventually. If you've got a fast ship and you've got the right crew to staff it, it really doesn't take too long. If you can score enough points to rank for that legendary, you're also going to be able to get 30 to 40% of an honor sale citation just with that. Another big benefit, you get to discount your item farming. So when you're pre-farming for the Galaxy events in the future, you're going to build up your stockpiles essentially for free just by competing in this event. You have to spend some chronotons. Those normal ship battles are going to give you back a currency called Intel that's limited just to the skirmish event. So you may want to just try to get that out of the way quickly with some of the most expensive battles, since that Intel scales up the more expensive the battle that you choose. But it's really probably smarter to spread things out and get those common Galaxy event items that come off of the first few episodes in the game. So if you can focus on episodes 1 and 2, those drop most of what you'll need to compete in Galaxy, which is fortunate. Skirmish ship battles drop chronoton rewards equal to roughly about 2/3 of what you spend. So it's a great rebate. And you can use those, reinvest them right back into skirmish, and you can play all the way down to 0. Basically playing, getting those rebates, and then putting them right back in again. Even better is if you fire off your supply kit before you start those big farming runs. Then you're not only going to get a reduction in what you have to pay into those missions, you're also going to get back double the credits as well. So you're going to be getting huge amounts of credits from just running those missions. Skirmish itself has credit drops as well. So you can really save up quickly and use those towards crew retrieval or even just basic packs to get some crew and honor. If you just walk into the Galaxy unprepared, you haven't done any farming ahead of time, you're gonna have a tough time. So starting off with a skirmish is a real smart way to begin your event play experience.
All right, you got to be the good cop there, Dan, and talk about the honor and the chronotons and credits and all those good rewards. And you can generally just stroll into a skirmish and gain most of that benefit, but in order to really do well and save yourself time and effort in future events, that Galaxy synergy we're talking about, you do want to do a little bit of prep. Ahead of time, you want to identify which battles to run before the event even starts. Now, you can look up where items drop from through different player resources, sttwiki.org, the subreddit, Discords usually have lists on that, or an easier route if you just want to get dip your toe in the pool is go to your crew panel, Find some crew who have unbuilt items that you're missing components for and hit that little that heart icon to favorite them. When the event starts and you need to warp a wide variety of different ship battles, you can jump between them easily by navigating that item build with the crew UI. Now, it also helps to familiarize yourself with which items are used in Galaxy event crafting. That list hasn't changed in several years, and WRG has said they don't really plan to change it up just because it's going to mess with players' preparation. So, again, player resources will be able to tell you which events are most commonly used, or you can just jot down which ones you might be missing during a Galaxy event. Now, you're going to burn through those low-rarity Galaxy items, those Episode 1 and 2 ones that Dan talked about, faster than you will others because you need them both for Galaxy events and regular crew building. All right, Dan, go ahead and wrap us up with a brief overview of the Skirmish event itself. Now, there isn't a ton to know here, and it doesn't vary too much between skirmishes, but go ahead and unpack that for us.
Yeah, well, my three top bullet points are going to be pew, pew, pew. You got to keep those skirmish battles flowing. It's a grind. These battles take a lot of time. They're worth it, but I recommend highly the first thing to do is just put on some good viewing on the TV in the background. Keep yourself entertained. After that, you probably want to get a fast ship so you can wrap those battles up quickly. As a new player, it's going to be difficult to get, particularly high level ships. You're going to be still unlocking those schematics at all the various ship star levels. Your ultimate goal is to get up to a 5-star ship and to get that as high as possible. There's a few ways to get those ships, but you'll generally get your lower rarity ships either by lucky drops from the Dabo wheel. A few really low-level ones drop from missions, but I wouldn't recommend farming those. Let those ships fall just naturally as you play the game. You'll get some from voyages as well. The better the ship you have, the more crew slots it will have, and you'll be able to jam in more crew to really help you finish those battles quickly. And in Skirmish, to quickly wrap up those battles, you're going to want to have what we call hammers. We mentioned in a previous episode on crew selection. So those 400% damage bonus crew that fire very quickly are going to really take out the weak ships that Skirmish tries to throw at you pretty fast. Make sure you leave room for at least one of your crew to be the full bonus crew, the event crew they call them. Those are going to give you triple the drops whenever you select your bonus boxes, and they're super important to getting the honor and credits that I mentioned earlier. If you have 4 slots on your ship, then it's really a legit way to go to do 3 400% damage hammer crew and then just your 1 event crew. And that event crew can even be level 1. It doesn't matter how strong your event crew is. Just as long as he's on the ship and part of the team, you're going to get that 3 times bonus drop. As you level up your ship, you're going to eventually be able to move up from the normal skirmish battles up to the elite, and then eventually to the epic battles. The difference is, of course, difficulty, but also in the amount of the drops you receive. So by completing the epic difficulty, you're going to get maximum drops, which is going to be up to 6,000 VP per battle, as well as extra honor credits and all the other goodies that drop. So I mentioned those drop boxes that we get from wrapping up the skirmish battles. Those are an option after you complete each one of the ships that you come across on each round. And the first 4 ships are all going to give you the option to choose a bonus box. If you need to repair your ship, there is a repair button to bring your hull back up to max, because it is kind of like an endurance match where your damage from each of those ships is going to carry over to the subsequent round. Your goal really should be, though, to be able to complete an entire skirmish round, all 5 battles, without hitting that repair button. If you are tempted to move up to the higher difficulty, maybe you're trying to find a way to get from normal to elite, but you find that more than half your battles, you have to hit that repair just to survive, you should probably stay at the lower level. The bonuses you receive from hitting those bonus boxes that you're leaving on the table by having to repair instead, it's probably to your benefit to stay at the lower level until you can get your ship leveled up even better.
Yeah, and that elite level difficulty, the medium difficulty, generally only requires that first level of a super rare ship. So if you get lucky in some packs early on and you only have a 1 out of 9 ship, that can usually carry you through. Now, the big question here, Dan, is what do you listen to? What do you watch while you're skirmishing? Because that really is the key to high performance in skirmish events.
I'd like to say I watch Star Trek, but while I'm doing my skirmish, I usually put on anything but.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a bit of a detour away from those weekend events and touch on objective events. Now, there are two main types of objective events: the month long or endurance event, which usually have easier requirements and reward you 4 copies of a legendary crew, or the shorter 2 day events, which rotate week to week. Now, WRG has been somewhat experimental with these, and so rather than run down the specifics of each event type, which may change over time, Dan, let's talk about how we can use these to our advantage. Now, there's more synergy to uncover here, which can help us farming for future weekend events.
There's a pattern to the requirements, and so the developer seems to want to guide us to using our resources. And one of the main ones that we see on a recurring basis is asking us to spend chronotons for some level of reward. That happens to a big degree in the one objective event that I'll call out by name, the critical chronoton event, where we're asked to spend 10,000 chronotons to get a whole bunch of quantum so we could do some extra crew retrievals. It's really rewarding. It's a fantastic objective event, although many players haven't saved chronotons enough to be able to participate in it. It takes a lot of planning to be able to stow that many, but if you're able to do it and you can anticipate that one of these events will be coming up, you'll be able to pop your supply kit. You'll be able to run missions until you've hit that $10,000 cron level, and you're going to be able to do some unique missions that you can't farm during the skirmish battles, which are those away missions. Since away missions don't drop the intel you need for your skirmish events, you can get some items that don't appear anywhere else. You can't get them from factions. You can't get them from ship battles. So it's a fantastic opportunity to pre-farm all those other items for the Galaxy events that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get.
Now, don't stress too much about getting the 10,000 all at once. It does scale up, so even if you, say, spend 1,000 chronotons, you're still getting some benefit from the quantum. In fact, a lot of these objective events you're not going to be able to fully complete right off the bat, right, Dan?
That's true. And it's going to be a little bit of a ramp up. But fortunately, there are some lower tiers that you can achieve. And not all the events are that focused on just a single type of achievement. So you're going to have some where you, like the month-long objective events are especially geared towards new players, where it just asks that you level a couple of crew. It actually gives you some items to help with that. And so even though it may seem like a kind of a tough proposition to look at all these great rewards that you're not earning, take a look at what you can. Choose your battles, and over time, you'll certainly be able to eventually get to that 100% completion. But anything that they give you for free, take it. If you can do it, just go ahead and get it done. Because there's some really great rewards just at the lower levels. You can get small bundles of crons. I don't. I think my favorite early reward that I get are just the shuttle boosts, because they're so hard to find for a newer player, and there's some really great shuttle boost drops that happen in some of these events too.
All right, so now you've farmed your heart out in a skirmish event, maybe ran a bunch of away missions in an objective event, and now you stroll into this next Galaxy weekend like Daddy Warbucks. You're flush with items, you maybe have a couple hundred or a couple thousand chronotons in reserve, and you're all set for a Galaxy event. Dan, what do folks need to know about Galaxy events, and how big a difference does all that farming we did ahead of time really make?
Well, it can make the difference between having 0 chronotons in your account and still being able to participate in a Galaxy event if you've properly done your pre-farming. So we've taken all the goodies that we found during our skirmish event, and now we have a Galaxy event. And that Galaxy event is going to give us a whole bunch of supply missions that require a number of different items. How do we navigate that? There are certainly going to be some missions that look expensive. Maybe they ask for an item that you just simply haven't farmed. Maybe it's one of those strange away team only mission items that you just haven't been able to get into your inventory. That's fine. Look at them all. There are actually, for each Galaxy event, there are going to be 7 different builds that you can choose from, and you don't need to build them all. You can only choose maybe your favorite 5 and just keep doing those again and again. Something else to make it quite a bit easier, the game has a super rare random drop that can happen. So as you're building these missions and incrementally building up your victory points, every once in a while, and more often, the stronger the crew you have, you're going to get extra items that drop that you can turn in for more bonus VP. So you'll have a bonus for completing your Galaxy missions in in the event crew that you choose to actually build those items. Some of the crew are going to give you as much as a 10 times bonus, and those bonuses directly govern how many of the super rare drops you receive. The super rares themselves are worth VP, so the more of those you generate, the better you do in the event. Uh, it, and it's really going to get you towards completing those maximum thresholds with much fewer resources invested. Galaxy events are expensive. You have to pay credits just to build the items. While they do give you back some rewards, you generally do need a whole lot of items to feed into them, and there's a tension where those items are needed by your crew that you're leveling. So I think there's a general consensus that, especially for younger players, choosing the threshold that you want to complete as a goal and then getting out of the event is fair. Competing in a Galaxy event as a young account is pretty difficult. And so you may find that even if you're at the very beginning of your Timelines journey, you may just want to play a single mission and get those community rewards. It's another feature of the Galaxy events that makes them very rewarding even for new accounts, is that you get free copies of 2 of the different event purples, and you'll also get a nice premium pack drop as well. So, and that's just for playing in the event for doing a single mission. As the rest of the community plays their Galaxy missions, they're going to reward you with copies of all of that, which is nice. Those build recipes, even though the first few times you see them, they may seem kind of mysterious and new, you're going to start to see patterns over time. There's actually only a limited amount of build recipes in the game, and they've been relatively stable for, I think, 5 or 6 years now. So you can really expect to see the same items being required event after event. And so that'll really help to inform your pre-farming.
My buddy Dan here is such a veteran. He's now fully entered the Galaxy Matrix where he's seen patterns in all the different item builds. Sorry to cut in, Dan. Keep going.
It's true though. You get used to seeing and hating very very specific Galaxy builds because they just require things that are too expensive. I don't want to part with my identification codes. They're mine. I'm going to keep them.
I'll add one more thing here about Galaxy events. Now, you can use skill boosts that you get from cadet missions, and they will increase your success chance to crit slightly, but generally they're better saved for faction events, especially early on. So let's go ahead and talk about those faction events right now. They do play out a little bit differently than Galaxy and Skirmish events. Instead of sustained tapping for a couple hours at a time, it does require your attention for the whole weekend, but in brief spurts. So you'll load up your shuttles and send them out every either 3 hours, or when you start to use time boosts, maybe every 90 minutes. It's also the event type that leverages all of your roster depth, meaning that new players will have a harder time with this one because you can't save up chronotons ahead of time like you can for the other events. Instead, you're pretty much solely reliant on the strength of your leveled crew. Now, there are a couple of mechanics at play which luckily can help you snag at least the first couple of copies of the super rare crew in the thresholds. Dan, let's say the listener is just starting their first ever faction event. Maybe they have a handful of crew at level 30, 40, 50, maybe just a couple crew with that small event bonus. How are they going to climb this huge faction mountain?
Well, the mountain, it's like a real mountain. It starts out kind of gentle and it'll slope up as you play. So just like you'll see with your daily shuttles, the shuttle difficulty in a faction event starts very low. You're going to get a 99% success on your shuttle with virtually any crew you drop onto it. But those will be quick shuttles. They'll only take a minute. And as you play, as those shuttles come back, you're going to see that the duration of the shuttle increases, but also the difficulty. So it kind of ramps to your skill level. And if you reach a point where those shuttles are really coming back with very low percentages, it'll adjust itself. It's dynamic. And as you send out your next battery of shuttles, you'll find that if you failed a whole bunch, then the difficulty will have diminished a bit. So don't be too daunted by them. It will take a lot of your crew, though. And if you can focus on those event crew, they're going to get 3 times or 2 times the strength of any normal crew. It's especially noticeable. Maybe you've been a regular player. Maybe you've achieved 4 stars on one of the objective event golds or a mega gold, and now you'd like to run an event. You may notice in your next faction event, if they don't align with the featured trait, or if they're not one of the event crew, you may have a purple, even at 3 stars, that is getting more shuttle seats than that gold does, just because of that strength doubling and tripling bonus that it receives. Also, you are going to hopefully be in a squad at this point in an active fleet. If you're not, go ahead and find one. The squad share is opened up for faction events. That means that a more experienced player is going to be able to put up one of their crew that all members of the squad can use. So it turns their one copy into up to 5 copies. Now, they do get paid a little bit of VP for the benefit of you're running their crew, but you're going to get free use of it as if it were in your roster. That's going to allow at least one of your shuttles to really go far beyond what the rest of your roster can. Also, as Otto mentioned, use those boosts. Even if your shuttles are going to be, firing off every 3 hours, that's fine. Make sure you get skill boosts on them. It doesn't affect the time, and it can only affect your success rate and get you more VP in the long run. You're going to find that you get a lot of boosts, especially if you're playing those cadet missions. Thursdays drop some really nice time boosts. And so you're going to be able to use those to get some better results. Even just a 3-star boost applied to a small bonus crew, you're suddenly all of a sudden really high up on the skill power, and they're going to get a lot more successes. Sometimes you may want to use some timers. Generally, I think players like to save those timers for when they're making a real dedicated push to trying to place and get a gold crew. But timers are useful if you want to make sure that you get a new shuttle out before you go to sleep. Maybe you want to put some of the double drop boosts on your shuttles so that you can have them fly for a full 9 hours but get double the drops when you wake up. Feel free to play around with those, but generally speaking, especially for the youngest rosters, the skill boosts are going to be the best value. In a prior video, we had mentioned the importance of using your dilithium to unlock those shuttle slots. And this is where it really pays off. Being able to take those 2 shuttles that you're given for free and add as many as 100% more shuttles to your run by unlocking those extra 2 shuttle bays. You're going to just progress through your thresholds that much faster, get higher rewards, and that is forever. So once you've unlocked those, every faction event, you're going to reap the benefits. I'll mention briefly a technique called a kickstart. You may have read about if you've done any reading around faction events. It's a technique where you can take the early easy shuttles at the lowest level of difficulty and bank them. You've run them, you save them, and you run them all for every single faction. Sometimes it's up to 24 different shuttle missions you run before you actually start to really play the event. If you execute a kickstart in a certain way, you're going to be able to ramp yourself up without having to wait those incremental amounts of time through. After the 1-minute shuttles, it goes up to, I think, a half hour, and then hour and a half shuttles. The kickstart's going to bring you through all those different incremental time increases and get you up to almost a maximum amount of victory points pretty early on. We'll get into kickstarts a little bit more in our tips video, but suffice it to say, it's something that after you've gotten the first few faction events under your belt, you may want to look into to really increase your payouts. This is the event type that's most influenced by dill spending. If you've maybe played a faction event before and been just short of hitting one of those threshold rewards, maybe you were about to get your first gold and just missed out at the last minute because a whole bunch of players came out of nowhere. It's very easy to spend dilithium to try to get an extra rank on here. Not necessary, though, and good play can always circumvent that.
So I will reiterate that out of all the different event types, faction can be really the most ruthless for new players because it relies on those leveled crews. So don't stress too much if your first few attempts you can't get too far up the thresholds. Just make sure you're in a strong fleet with a good squad share and save some boosts for crew that have an event bonus. Now that being said, of course, factions do have an advantage, that being that you don't have to spend chronotons in the event. So early on you can continue to level your crew during the event and you don't have to worry about an interruption there like galaxies. So let's go ahead and tie those 3 weekend event types together with something called hybrid events. Now, hybrids are very simply half and half events where the first 2 days are one event type, faction, galaxy, or skirmish, and the second half is a different type. Now, you can approach your preparation for hybrid events very similarly to the standalone events, except for a couple tweaks concerning how fast you gain points in one event phase or the other. And Dan, why don't you run down the details of that for us?
Hybrid events are split up into 2 2-day segments. and they're really not all created equal. You may find yourself really favoring one, pushing it hard to be able to coast in the other 2 days. For that reason, hybrid events can be great if you've got a couple of busy days and you won't be able to play timelines. You may be able to make all your victory points just in the first 2 day segment. So, looking back at all the different types of events that we've discussed, I think we can all agree that skirmish is going to be your primary push if you have a hybrid event with a couple of skirmish days in it. I would put all of your time and focus into that if you're able to, no matter whether the other half of the event is galaxy or faction. But the most common hybrid event type is faction galaxy. Historically, it's been the only hybrid up until the past year when they started mixing up the formats a little bit. I think generally speaking, for faction galaxy events, we tend to see a more coasting style of play on the faction half of it, where players will not use their most valuable boosts. Really, just kind of send the shuttles and unlock those threshold bonuses. Maybe get a few copies of the purple crew, so that when they finally play the galaxy, they can really push that a little bit harder. I think players also who have time commitments as well, since the faction, as Otto mentioned, you need to be pretty much on a periodic basis to keep your shuttles flowing, whereas the galaxy really lets you choose your time. So if I had to tier them in a hybrid event, I would do a skirmish would be where I'd push the most, followed by galaxy, and then faction being the last. The other note I have about hybrid events, they're more or less similar to all the rules apply that we just discussed, but there's one special note about something that we affectionately call dirty shuttles. If you have a faction galaxy and the faction portion happens first, that time cutoff is gonna occur on Saturday at noon for Eastern Standard Time players. And when that happens, players have found that you are able to open up as many shuttles as you want for all of those different factions that are part of the event, and they can stay open. They can still earn victory points even after the faction portion has expired. So we call those dirty shuttles because you can actually still keep running, earning thresholds, and keeping those essentially free shuttle runs flowing for the rest of that Saturday, and then you don't even need to start putting any sort of effort into the Galaxy event until the next day. So that's a nice little note to keep in your back pocket.
All right, just go ahead and make sure that you open those dirty shuttles before the phase change. If you do it afterwards, they'll just become regular shuttles. Now, Dan, young man, I see a note here in our document that says Dirty Sanchez. Would you like to explain what that's all about, or was that just a Dirty Shuttles typo?
I've never met him. I
Right.
We'll consider that a typo and move on.
Very mature, very, very serious podcast here. One last consideration before we wrap things up, something called mega events. Now, megas are run roughly every other month, and they play out almost identically to regular events, but they end up being a little bit more generous than standalone events, especially for a new player. So, Dan, what should players keep an eye out for inside mega events?
The biggest advantage to mega events, and I touched on this briefly earlier, is you get 4 free gold stars on a single crew. It's like a windfall to any new player being able to get that strong of a crew for essentially for free. It unlocks really low on the threshold rewards too at 22,000 victory points. So even for a modest effort in any event, you're going to get a star on whatever the recurring legendary is. Not only is that going to get you a great crew for daily play, but also it's going to be an investment in those following events. So megas last for a month. That recurring legendary crew will be counted as an event crew for those multiplier bonuses for every single event, and he's only going to get stronger as you continue to play. You may want to take a look at other possible bonus crew ahead of time. Generally, mega events focus around a single trait or race. And so you'll see that if you have any of those crew, you may want to prioritize them to level and put your resources into, because they'll pay you back also in getting more successes as you play those events. They're going to get a lot of value, and it's really nice to know, kind of have a roadmap to what the events are going to be. Generally, we only know 2 weeks out, but with megas, they'll announce the formats for a month in advance. and being able to have that information to really guide where your resources go is invaluable.
All right, so that's just about all you need to know to compete in the weekly events. Now, they do require a little bit more thought ahead of time than your regular day-to-day activities like voyages or gauntlet, but they can be very rewarding and are your main source of new crew. Now, the too long didn't watch summary here is that it is absolutely possible to succeed at a high level almost every single week without spending a dime in events. Or maybe you just want to rank for the new legendary crew that you like every 4 to 6 weeks and ignore the others. That's completely viable too. The number one piece of advice I like to give new players, and here it is buried in at the end of a part 3 recording, is don't stress about how fast your roster grows or how much you're succeeding. Aside from airlocking top rarity crew, there's pretty much nothing you can do to go backwards in timelines. Every threshold you clear, every new super rare you acquire from an event will help your roster grow and make each new event easier than the last. Now, in our next and final episode, we're going to provide you with a wide range of tips and tricks to help you get up to speed in every phase of the game. Thanks for listening.